She combined these qualities with warmth, humor, and an unerring ability always to see the best in people.
The documents were placed before King Charles without ceremony, without warning, and without a single comforting explanation. Minutes later, Camilla entered the room carrying a plea she believed her husband could not refuse. But Charles had already seen enough. He closed the file, looked directly at the Queen, and rejected her request in a voice so cold that even the most experienced courtiers understood. Something inside the monarchy had just broken. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles kept one hand over the sealed folder as silence hardened around them. A senior royal secretary had delivered it inside his Buckingham Palace office, warning that copies had reached several departments and could not be quietly withdrawn. The royal household, the network of staff supporting working royals, now had a duty to examine every page. That mattered because the papers connected Camilla's household, charitable network, and unofficial communications to decisions made in the king's name. He read slowly, removed his glasses, and set them beside the file. The gesture was small, but the pain behind it was not. This was no administrative mistake. Private influence had reached into the crown, the institution representing the monarch's authority. Camilla stood opposite him, struggling to steady her voice. She asked him to suspend the review, arguing that scrutiny would humiliate her, damage their marriage, and destroy trust she had spent years rebuilding. The Queen did not deny the communications existed. She pleaded for time, privacy, and protection. Yet Charles heard fear beneath her words, fear of what investigators might uncover. He answered plainly. He would not halt the examination, shield anyone named, or use royal power to make evidence disappear. Then he pushed the folder away, while keeping his palm firmly across its cover. Camilla noticed a marked page near the back, and reached toward it. The king closed the file before her fingers arrived. Her expression changed because the annotation proved he had discovered something she did not know was included. She asked what he had seen. Charles refused to answer. The silence told her enough. When she turned toward the door, she was pale, shaken, and unsure the crisis could be contained. The most painful question was not what the documents exposed, but why her husband seemed convinced they revealed a decision made by someone he had trusted completely. And as the door closed between husband and wife, the crisis stopped being a matter of paperwork and became a battle between two people whose private loyalties had always carried the weight of the crown. For decades, Charles and Camilla had survived public condemnation, family resistance, and the unforgiving memory of a royal marriage that ended in tragedy. They believed the worst storms were behind them, yet the documents now lying inside the king's office threatened something neither scandal nor protest had managed to destroy: their certainty in one another. Charles was not facing a distant political opponent. He was facing the woman who had become his closest companion. Charles remained alone, and silence offered no comfort. He crossed toward the window, stopped before the curtains, and gripped the back of a chair until his fingers tightened. The monarchy, the institution built around the sovereign and the public duties carried out in the nation's name, depended on discipline, because trust could not survive if private influence overruled formal judgment. He had shaped his reign around stability and service. Now the papers suggested that people near his wife had treated closeness to the throne as permission. Camilla felt danger from the opposite side. She had spent years changing public hostility into reluctant acceptance, then acceptance into service. Becoming a working queen meant carrying official duties on behalf of the crown, not merely standing beside her husband. Yet one file could reverse that journey. In her sitting room, she removed a bracelet with trembling fingers and asked Annabel Elliot whether Charles had already decided she had betrayed him. Her sister insisted the king knew her heart, but Camilla shook her head. Hearts, she whispered, were not what investigators would examine. William entered the crisis without triumph. A confidential briefing, a restricted explanation, intended only for senior royal decision-makers, reached the prince before evening. He read it twice, then focused on initials repeated beside altered schedules, private recommendations, and instructions passed between Camilla's circle and palace officials. The future king recognized a pattern. One trusted intermediary had moved quietly between personal requests and formal decisions, making each appear supported by authority it may never have possessed. William closed the briefing, but kept the initials fixed in his mind. Camilla's humiliation gave him no satisfaction, because Charles' judgment could shape the future reign as surely as any public scandal. If his father defended her blindly, the institution would look compromised. If the king abandoned her without hearing the truth, the family could fracture beyond repair. William paused outside Charles's office and rehearsed his first sentence. One careless accusation might make his father protect Camilla instead of confronting the evidence. But before William could challenge the king, the palace had to understand how this secret network began, and which single royal incident transformed quiet influence into an explosive trail of evidence. Every royal crisis has a moment that appears harmless, until history looks back and recognizes the warning. In this case, it began during a private planning meeting after a major palace ceremony. The guests had departed, the official photographs had been released, and the public believed the day had ended successfully. But behind a closed door, one disputed decision triggered an exchange of messages that would eventually return as the documents now threatening the queen. Camilla had allowed a quiet system to grow around her. Trusted advisors handled invitations, charitable recommendations, ceremonial access, and staffing preferences without sending every request through Charles's formal office. The arrangement seemed practical, because the king's office, the team responsible for reviewing decisions made in the sovereign's name, was already burdened by constant demands. Her circle understood her priorities, and palace officials accepted suggestions that appeared minor, temporary, and easy to reverse. But convenience slowly became influence, and influence began crossing lines no one wanted to name. The warning arrived after a Commonwealth reception at Buckingham Palace. The Commonwealth reception, a formal gathering for representatives of nations linked through the voluntary Commonwealth Association, had ended without public trouble. Yet Camilla privately instructed her senior aide to restore a controversial associate to a future guest list after Charles's office had removed that person. She called the change harmless. Her aide obeyed, though the order directly challenged a decision already approved by the monarch's staff. Sir Clive Alderton confronted the aide in a corridor and warned that reversing the removal, without Charles's knowledge, crossed both a constitutional and personal boundary. In this dramatized account, his warning was preserved in a written summary prepared that evening. Camilla overheard enough to understand the danger, but she refused to withdraw her request. The queen insisted the guest had been treated unfairly, and her silence gave the aide permission to continue. Officials began protecting themselves. They preserved emails, handwritten notes, calendar changes, and summaries of verbal instructions. Routine record-keeping became an archive of pressure. The initials inside the current file belonged to a private advisor who repeatedly told palace staff that Camilla's wishes carried Charles's personal approval, even when the king had never been asked. Charles reached the report and remembered his wife saying the disagreement had been settled administratively. Now he understood that the account had been incomplete. The discovery cut deeper because her reassurance had silenced every doubt he carried about that evening. That forgotten reception had created the first crack in Charles's trust. But the confrontation ahead would force Camilla to explain not merely what her advisors had done, but what she had personally allowed them to do. Charles did not summon a committee. He did not hide behind lawyers, secretaries, or carefully prepared palace language. He asked Camilla to meet him alone. The file waited between two chairs, its pages marked by the king's own hand. When she entered, Charles remained standing. Then he asked the one question she had feared from the moment the document surfaced. Had his name been used to force decisions he had never approved? Charles dismissed the aides outside his private library and ordered that no minutes be taken. Minutes are the official written record of a meeting, and their absence meant neither side could hide behind formal wording later. For the first time since the crisis began, no secretary, lawyer, or courtier stood between husband and wife. Several documents showed officials being told that Camilla's requests reflected the sovereign's preference, meaning the personal wish of the reigning monarch. That phrase had broken resistance over appointments, access, and charitable patronage. Charles tapped one paragraph with his index finger. "Did you use my name?" Camilla answered that she had trusted others to communicate wishes they shared. The king did not move. Shared wishes, he told her, were not royal authorization. The crown could not be borrowed for convenience, because every instruction carrying his approval affected careers, public money, and the monarchy's credibility. Camilla pushed her chair backward. She accused him of judging her more harshly because of their history, and her voice cracked under years of buried humiliation. She had endured condemnation, isolation, and suspicion to stand beside him. Yet now he treated her like an intruder inside the life they had fought to build. Charles heard the pain, but he did not retreat. Love could explain fear. It could not erase responsibility. Charles produced a handwritten note bearing a phrase she often used with her staff. Camilla denied ordering anyone to misrepresent him, but then admitted she knew her advisor sometimes invoked the king's support to prevent objections. She had not corrected the practice because it made the household move faster. The confession changed everything. The deception may not have begun with her command, but it had survived through her permission. Charles set his pen on the table. He told her the matter had moved beyond their marriage, and would now be judged through a formal review, an official examination of records and conduct. Camilla would not select its leaders, limit its reach, or shape its result. Camilla had finally admitted the silence that allowed others to wield the king's authority. But the next struggle would reveal who could actually strip that influence away, and whether Charles possessed the strength to permit it. The most consequential royal decisions are rarely announced with raised voices. They are made through signatures, revised reporting lines, and doors that no longer open. Within hours of the confrontation, Charles approved a restructuring that removed the disputed channels from Camilla's control. It was not an abdication of affection, nor a public punishment. It was something colder, a deliberate transfer of authority, designed to ensure that no private relationship could again speak in the king's name. Charles understood that signing was only the beginning. As sovereign, he possessed the formal power to reorganize the royal household, the network of staff and offices supporting the monarch's public work. Yet the order could not function through authority alone. The private secretary, the senior official coordinating royal business, would enforce it with legal advisors, while William would watch over its long-term meaning as Prince of Wales, the heir responsible for protecting the monarchy's future. William met his father at a small table, without photographers, uniforms, or ceremony. Camilla's unofficial intermediaries would lose access to appointment discussions, ceremonial planning, and messages crossing between royal households. Every future request would require a written record and central approval. Before touching the authorization, Charles asked whether this made him disloyal to his wife. The prince paused because comfort would have been easier than honesty. Then he answered that truth was not disloyalty, and protection built on silence was not love. Charles signed. He kept the pen between his fingers, long after the ink dried, staring at the order that confirmed what he had resisted admitting. Assurances from Camilla's circle could no longer be trusted. William remained beside him, understanding that his father had preserved the crown by wounding his own marriage. The king had won control, but the victory carried no relief. The consequences moved quickly. Investigators suspended the intermediary named throughout the file from every form of palace contact, while they traced appointments, invitations, and charitable decisions shaped by false claims of royal approval. Legal officials then found references to a second archive stored outside the main palace system. Those references suggested hidden messages still existed, making the known documents look less like the complete record and more like its opening chapter. Camilla recognized Charles's signature before reading the first sentence of the restructuring notice. She held the page motionless as the secretary waited, knowing her husband had turned refusal into command. No appeal, private promise, or familiar advisor could now return what had been removed. The king's signature had ended Camilla's informal authority in a single stroke, but the real impact would be measured by what happened when the people around her began stepping back. Power rarely disappears with a dramatic announcement. Sometimes it vanishes through unanswered calls, cancelled meetings, and familiar faces that suddenly avoid eye contact. By the following morning, Camilla's world had changed. Advisors who once moved freely through her rooms now required written clearance. Invitations were paused. Briefing folders stopped arriving. The Queen remained surrounded by royal grandeur, yet for the first time since Charles became king, she understood what it meant to be institutionally alone. Camilla sat at her desk and opened the morning red box, the locked case used to carry official royal papers. Only routine correspondence waited inside. The planning files, appointment recommendations, and ceremonial notes were gone, because palace departments had received new orders. Her household could not alter guest lists, recommend appointments, or present the king's wishes without written confirmation. That mattered, because influence once exercised through trust now had to survive evidence, and several engagements linked to disputed advisors were already being postponed. Camilla asked an aide where the missing papers had gone. The aide hesitated, then explained that everything now passed through Charles's central office. She reached toward the telephone, ready to call her husband, but stopped before lifting the receiver. Instead, the Queen removed the restructuring notice from a drawer, folded it once, and crushed the edge beneath her palm. The gesture carried what she could not say. The king had not merely questioned her judgment, he had rebuilt the system so it could function without her influence. Loyalty collapsed next. One member of Camilla's private circle resigned, while another offered full cooperation with the review, the official examination of records and conduct. She understood then that those who had encouraged resistance were now protecting themselves. Their confidence had vanished the moment consequences became personal. Charles received a handwritten letter before noon. Camilla did not ask him to reverse the order. She insisted that the documents distorted her motives and turned fear into ambition. The king read every line alone, then placed the message beside the original file without answering. His silence bruised more deeply than anger, because it showed he no longer trusted words, unsupported by records. Charles kept the letter within reach, but never unfolded it again. Camilla waited for a reply that did not come, and each hour made reconciliation feel increasingly impossible. William watched the distance widen and decided accusation could not become permanent. Silence. The prince arranged a private meeting beyond the reach of aides, offices, and prepared language. The official fallout had stripped Camilla of access, influence, and certainty, but William's intervention would force the royal couple to confront a truth no document could settle for them. There were no secretaries in the room, no legal folders, and no royal emblems positioned to remind anyone of rank. William had insisted on one condition. Charles and Camilla would speak as husband and wife before they spoke again as king and queen. What followed was not another battle over documents. It was a reckoning over fear, pride, and the dangerous belief that love could excuse silence, when silence had already begun to corrupt trust. William brought them into a modest sitting room at Clarence House, then left and closed the door. Clarence House is the London royal residence long associated with Charles and Camilla, but that afternoon, it offered neither comfort nor protection. No aides waited to soften harsh words. No prepared statement told them what to say. No disputed papers lay between them. The prince had removed every institutional shield, forcing his father and the queen to speak, without using the monarchy as either weapon or excuse. Camilla broke the silence first. She admitted that when Charles became sovereign, she had feared becoming irrelevant beside the weight of his new role. The throne had elevated him, yet it had made her feel easier to replace, easier to ignore, and easier to blame. She allowed trusted figures to exaggerate her authority, because influence seemed like protection against being pushed aside. The confession was not polished. It came slowly, with pauses that exposed how long she had hidden the fear. Charles listened without interrupting. Then he told her ambition was not the deepest wound. Concealment was. He would have heard her concerns had she spoken openly, but she had permitted others to create obedience through his name. The king explained that royal authority meant decisions formally made or approved by the tense sovereign, not private pressure disguised as shared intention. Her silence had turned affection into leverage, and that was the betrayal he could not ignore. Camilla accepted the boundary. She agreed to surrender every remaining unofficial message, dismiss the advisor at the center of the file, and make no attempt to obstruct the investigation. Charles refused to restore her former influence, but promised she would not be publicly abandoned. Their marriage could survive only if her public duties were rebuilt around limited, transparent responsibilities. William saw the door open and understood that neither had won. Both had accepted the cost. Palace officials were ordered to prepare a statement before uncontrolled leaks defined them. Their silence had changed its meaning completely now. Their private reckoning had produced a fragile agreement, but once the palace spoke, the Fejuolochos no longer belonged to the royal family alone. They would become a national judgment. By sunrise, the crisis had escaped the palace walls. The first editions appeared on newsstands, carrying a headline so severe that commuters stopped to photograph it. Broadcasters abandoned their scheduled segments. Crowds began gathering outside Buckingham Palace, not because a ceremony had been announced, but because the public sensed that a private royal conflict had forced a historic correction. The monarchy had survived scandal before. This time, however, the king had acted against his own household. Buckingham Palace issued its statement before speculation could harden into accepted truth. The announcement confirmed that procedures within Camilla's household were being restructured, and that Charles had authorized a full review of communications involving sovereign approval. Sovereign approval means formal permission given in the monarch's name, and its misuse mattered because it could turn private wishes into commands affecting appointments, charities, and public trust. Broadcasters framed the decision as proof that the king's closest relationship would not be allowed to override accountability. Charles listened to the morning bulletin while barely touching his breakfast. When the presenter described the order as a rejection of Camilla's plea, he lowered his cup and asked for the radio to be switched off. The king had wanted discipline, not humiliation. Yet once the palace spoke, he could no longer control how the decision would be understood. Camilla faced judgment from another room. She studied a newspaper front page, showing a closed palace door beneath the words, "The king said no." The queen remained motionless, then folded the paper until her own photograph disappeared. She had feared losing influence. Now she was watching the country reduce her marriage, her work, and her failure to 4 brutal words. Outside Buckingham Palace, a crowd pressed toward the railings as a broadcaster delivered a live report. One woman raised a handwritten placard declaring, "The crown must answer to its own rules." Cameras captured it, and the message became the defining symbol of the day. Initial shock slowly shifted into guarded approval as commentators recognized that Charles had not buried the documents. Even critics admitted his refusal placed a visible boundary around royal power. Charles heard that reaction but found no comfort in it. Public approval could protect the monarchy, yet it could not repair what had broken between him and Camilla. With the atmosphere stabilizing, the king prepared a concluding order defining her duties, the advisor's fate, and the meaning of the crisis. That final choice could never remain private again. The nation had delivered its reaction, but only the king could deliver the final verdict, and that verdict would decide whether this moment became a royal collapse or a painful act of renewal. The final decision did not destroy the marriage, remove the queen, or pretend that nothing had happened. Instead, it drew a permanent line through the heart of the monarchy. Charles chose to remain beside Camilla as her husband, while refusing to protect the system that had grown around her. It was an act of painful separation between love and authority, and in that distinction, the king delivered the clearest verdict of his reign. Charles carried the completed order into their final private meeting and placed it before Camilla himself. The royal order, a formal instruction issued under the monarch's authority, permanently moved staffing appointments, ceremonial access, cross-household requests, and every message invoking sovereign approval into one central written system. That change mattered, because no private advisor could again turn personal closeness into official command. The Queen would keep her public position, but the hidden channels uncovered by the documents were gone. Camilla read every page without interrupting. The intermediary, who had repeatedly used Charles's name, was dismissed from royal service, while others were removed from sensitive duties. Decisions shaped by false approval would be reviewed and reversed where necessary. The king told her he would not humiliate her, but he would never again confuse devotion with permission. His voice carried no anger now, only finality. Camilla signed the acknowledgement, a written confirmation that she understood and accepted the order. She did not ask him to reconsider. Instead, she admitted that fear of losing influence had almost cost her the one thing she valued, more than authority, the trust they had fought decades to build. The Queen had survived public hatred and private judgment, yet this wound cut deeper, because it came from choices she had allowed inside her own circle. Charles took her hand, but the gesture was not absolution. It was a quieter agreement. They would remain together, though their royal responsibilities would now operate within limits neither affection nor pressure could cross. The marriage survived, but it survived differently, less protected by illusion and more bound by truth. The crown changed with them. By refusing Camilla's plea, Charles proved that the monarchy could not claim moral authority while shielding its own. The decision wounded his household, but it strengthened the institution by applying discipline where it hurt most. The documents did not end her place beside him. They ended the belief that proximity to the king guaranteed unchecked influence. For Charles, accountability had entered his own home and demanded sacrifice. For Camilla, acceptance became the price of remaining beside him with honesty rather than to borrowed power ever again. There would be no return to the old arrangement, no hidden restoration, and no quiet reversal. The king had made his choice. Camilla had accepted its cost, and the crown emerged scarred but unmistakably changed. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.